right along to having our discussion on 2016 budget priorities. We have approximately 30 minutes budgeted, um, and we're not going to be really tight on the time, but I think given the hour, we'll try to keep it to 35 or 40 minutes. I have about 5 minutes, maybe not quite, 4 minutes worth of comments that I want to make as we move forward. I'm sure these will elicit debate and discussion. First, again, as we've said, our work tonight begins on the 2016 budget. And I hope as we go down this process, it will become to understand that this is not about, it should not be about ideology and philosophy. There's a good reason why 75% of American cities have nonpartisan elections. And most of the ones that are not, frankly, are in machine cesspools from the yesteryear. The vast majority, overwhelming majority of this country has pulled party labels off local elections. And that's because what we're involved in is about protecting our citizens and delivering services to them at a reasonable cost. Unfortunately, during this year's budget process, there have been some bitter and venomous disputes, and that we've seen some rhetoric that we heard at the state and national levels have frankly reared their ugly head here in our own debates in Bloomington, Illinois. So let's be clear. Issues such as health care, gay marriage, and the fiscal irresponsibility of the state and national government have no place directly anything to do with what we're dealing with here in Bloomington. And I can certainly fully understand people's frustrations with the politics of Springfield and Washington. I mean, when you hear these polls that 87% of people disapprove of Congress and 9% approve, I kind of wonder, the 9%, what do you approve of, right? And that's not the case. So some of the rhetoric and talking points that we've heard from national political debate have been thrown a lot, frankly, in the last several weeks. This doesn't help our progress, making progress in our community, quite the contrary. The ideological and partisan invectives are poison. They're not going to help move us forward. And as any observer of local government in the world will tell you, political scientists, policy analysts, public administration people, there are very, very few ideological leaders that are successful in local government. They don't make it, or they realize, oh, all that ideological crap that I've been fighting at the national level doesn't apply here at the local level. In the United States, we had a few people called sewer socialists about 100 years ago that got elected during the progressive era in Detroit and some other places in Milwaukee, and they realized, I guess I have to deliver public services, forget all that ideological stuff. So the broad, sometimes abstract policy debates about the role of government at higher levels that are often removed from day-to-day realities do not provide clear policy guidelines to us in delivering public services to specific communities. Further, we may not always know what we're getting for our money in Washington or in the state, but here in Bloomington, it's quite clear. And as I mentioned, the vast majority is police, fire, public works. And the next largest category is Parks and Rec, combined 4% of our budget. So at the local level, we deliver services and we deliver them directly. So if some of our citizens don't want even inflationary costs in our services, so national political talking points such as government needs to live within its means, well, that's fine. But then at the local level, that means we here in Bloomington have already shed almost 100 positions. The logical follow-up question is, what large group of people do you want to lay off, or what core functions of the city of Bloomington do you not want us to continue to deliver? So the tire hits the pavement here in Bloomington. That's our reality. And my last introductory point is that as we move forward in this discussion, and we're going to throw a lot of ideas out, and I'm sure, we're not going to agree. We're human. That's going to happen. But we must have good data. And otherwise, we are fooling ourselves, or we're promising people a free lunch. And there are no free lunches. Now, some may say I'm a stickler for data, and that may be true. I've been involved in local government decision-making for nearly 30 years, and literally when I was at the International City County Management Association, I literally wrote the book for them on how you use data in making local government decisions about 25 years ago. But the level of scrutiny I'm suggesting is actually very, very minimal. And that is, if we're talking about items, and especially if we're talking about budget cuts, there at least ought to be 4 things that I would assume every reasonable person could agree on. First, they have to be feasible. Second, we have to have enough information from them in terms of clarity, so that others can understand where they come from and can evaluate their possible impact. 3, the numbers must be accurate, and 4, they've got to be in the budget, because if they're not in the budget, you can't cut them, and it doesn't help your bottom line. And Alderwoman Stearns, unfortunately, over 80% of your budget proposed cuts do not meet that even simple criteria. And in fact, some of them, one of them was the most surprising to me, was a Starcom Digital 21 communication system to be cut by $285,000. And this wasn't just something that you mentioned, and I'll give you time to respond here, but this is not just something you mentioned in passing. You talked about it in public. You distributed at a town hall meeting. You even made a motion last week to approve those. Thank God they weren't passed, because one of the things, if you had made a 2-minute conversation, a 2-minute phone call to either our police chief or a fire chief, you would have realized that not only are they not feasible, but they would put our entire community in serious risk. You cannot have 2/3 of a digital radio system. It's not the slightest exaggeration to say that this would have put our entire community at risk, because 1/3 of our people couldn't talk to others. The State Farm incident of 5 years ago, where we had problems with interoperability, should have driven that point home. If you recall, we had our Bloomington police, and we had county, we had firefighters, we had others, the sheriff's department, they couldn't talk to each other. We are now moving to a Starcom 21 system. You can't have 2/3 of a radio system. That is for our police, our firefighters, and our 911 people. Do you want to be one of the 1 out of 3 who can't talk to dispatch or can't talk to anyone else? And it doesn't just put Bloomington in a situation where we would not be safe, but because we could not respond to normal, and normal couldn't respond to us, and 1/3 of our people couldn't respond to the sheriff's department, it puts the entire community at risk. The point is, we've got to do our homework. It would not have been unreasonable to make a 2-minute phone call. That's not unreasonable to make sure that what you were talking about would have put our entire community at risk.
I think it's time for me to respond, Mayor. I did that. I absolutely did that.
Then did you not
and
listen
I
to
was,
what they told
yes,
you?
I did listen to exactly
Okay.
what. I
All
think
right.
this kind of discussion is a
just a little
disgrace. This is disgraceful.
Let me
I asked in an email to you 3 days ago that you bring out the contract for the Starcom, which we don't even have. I made that phone call, and I had a very in-depth discussion with a member of our public service, our public safety, and a very astute member, one whose opinion you value very much. And I was absolutely told that this was a system that could be brought out in phases. And in fact, just right before this council meeting, I mentioned to Chief Kimmerling that we would like to have the contract. And he said, yes, there are phases. So I think we're going to solve this, and I mentioned it in my email, not with a rancorous public discussion, but with a contract and the actual data in front of us for an $865,000 expenditure, which I was told by a very high-ranking member of our public safety
Well, did you
can't.
talk to
So
the
I
police
made
chief
phone.
or the fire chief? Those are the people I
Well,
think you talked to.
I made the phone call,
Maybe I
and
can solve this a
I
little bit.
got
did
the
make
information.
I did also make a phone
Okay.
call. I talked to a gentleman that built the Starcom system in Springfield. Personally, I had a meeting with him. Okay? There is a way. It doesn't happen overnight, but there is a way. And what she's not talking is not outside the box. I'm sorry. You need to slow down with what you're accusing her of.
What are we doing right now? What are we doing right now that's
We're
endangering the citizens of Bloomington? What do we?
If we move forward with the $285,000 of cuts,
Yeah.
we'd have 2/3 of a radio system.
No, we would not. No, that is absolutely incorrect, Mayor. If you
okay.
want to call the police
We do
chief or the
need to
fire
have-
chief
first of all,
up, then you will
It
have.
took them 2 minutes each to
Well,
do
like to
this.
call a point of
you
order.
have 6-figure employees who are
Yeah.
going to support
I
what's
really
in
want
the
to kind of get
budget.
this conversation back on the budget priorities.
I would
We
not
do
either.
need a
I think this
timeout.
is
Okay.
totally inappropriate.
All right. No, actually, well, okay. My last point was we need good data. And frankly, if I think that something is outrageous that would have harmed my community, I am going to speak out about it.
No
and
one would harm the community, Mayor. That's outrageous. That's an outrageous claim, and it's wrong.
I think it's called
It's
the facts.
totally
So,
wrong.
All right. We're going to move forward with further discussion. We obviously disagree about whether this is feasible. We're going to be able to continue a public discussion with our fire chief, with our police chief, and they can confirm what the situation might be as we move forward. So who else would like to weigh in on our general discussion?